In East Austin, Texas, a machine the size of a small crane is squeezing out concrete like toothpaste, building the walls of an entire house while its operators just watch. 47 hours later, those walls are done, not 47 days, 47 hours. And the people moving into these homes are not tech millionaires or early adopters chasing a trend. They are men and women who, just months earlier, were sleeping under highway overpasses. Some spent decades on the streets. Today, they hold their own keys. This is the story of how America started printing its way out of a housing crisis. To understand why this matters, you have to understand the scale of the problem. On any given night in the United States, more than 650,000 people are experiencing homelessness. Among them are tens of thousands of veterans, men and women who served this country and came home to find no affordable place to live. The math behind the crisis is brutal. A traditional home takes about 7 months to build. It requires framers, roofers, electricians, plumbers, and a construction industry that is short hundreds of thousands of workers. Material costs have climbed year after year. In cities like Austin, Los Angeles, and Nashville, even a modest starter home has drifted out of reach for millions of working families. Shelters overflow, waiting lists for affordable housing stretch for years. And here is the part of the crisis that rarely makes the evening news. One of the fastest growing groups of homeless Americans is seniors. People in their 60s and 70s, many of them widows on fixed incomes, are losing housing after a single rent increase, a medical bill, or the death of a spouse. Social workers now talk about the gray wave, retirees sleeping in cars in church parking lots because their Social Security check no longer covers an apartment. These are people who worked their whole lives, raised families, paid taxes, and did everything right. Every solution seemed to run into the same two walls. Building homes costs too much, and it takes too long. Then a small Texas startup asked a question that sounded almost childish. What if a house could be printed like a document, poured out by a robot in a couple of days for a fraction of the cost? Most construction veterans laughed at the idea. They are not laughing anymore. The company behind this revolution is called Icon, founded in Austin in 2017 by a man named Jason Ballard. Ballard grew up in East Texas, where he watched hurricanes and floods destroy the same modest homes again and again. He also worked with homeless communities and saw firsthand how a lack of shelter destroys human dignity. He became convinced that construction itself was the problem. Home building is one of the least automated industries on Earth. We build houses in 2026 roughly the way we built them in 1950, one nail at a time with expensive human hands doing almost everything. So Ballard and his co-founders built a machine to change that. They called it the Vulcan. Picture a giant robotic gantry, a steel frame that straddles the foundation of a house like a bridge. Hanging from that frame is a nozzle, and through that nozzle flows a special concrete mixture the company calls Treat. The Vulcan moves back and forth along a programmed path, laying down bead after bead of concrete, each layer about an inch tall, stacking them with the precision of a machine that never gets tired, never shows up late, and never makes a measuring mistake. Watching it work is strangely hypnotic. The walls rise in smooth, rippled layers, like a clay pot being coiled by an invisible potter the size of a house. In March of 2018, Icon unveiled something no one in America had ever seen: the first permitted 3D printed home in the United States, standing in East Austin. It was a small house, about 350 square feet, with a bedroom, a bathroom, a living room, and a curved porch. The printed portion took roughly 47 hours of print time, spread across several days, and the concrete walls cost about $10,000 to produce. Ballard stood in front of reporters and said the goal was to eventually push that cost down to around $4,000 per home. Construction executives were skeptical. Building codes had no category for printed houses. Inspectors did not know what to do with walls that came out of a nozzle. But the little gray house on Chacon Street passed its permits, and it is still standing today, having survived Texas heat waves, storms, and a historic freeze without so much as a crack. That single small building quietly proved the point. A machine really could build a safe, legal, permanent American home in about 2 days of printing. The question was no longer whether it worked. The question was, who would get these homes first? And the answer to that question is where this story becomes something genuinely moving. So what do those 48 hours actually look like on the ground? Picture a quiet construction site at sunrise in the Texas Hill Country. A concrete slab foundation has already been poured and cured, and overnight, a crew of 3 or 4 people has assembled the Vulcan printer over it like a giant still picture frame. In hour 1, a technician loads the design file, a digital blueprint that tells the nozzle exactly where every wall, doorway, window opening, and electrical channel will go. Then, the printing begins. The nozzle glides along its track, laying the first inch-tall bead of gray lavacrete in one continuous, winding path around the entire footprint of the home. By lunchtime on day 1, the walls are knee-high, and you can already walk the floor plan, standing in what will become a kitchen, a bedroom, a bathroom. The machine does not break for lunch. It prints through the afternoon heat, through the evening, and with lights on, it can keep going into the night while one operator monitors the mixture. By the morning of day 2, the walls are shoulder height, with neat gaps left for windows and hollow channels for wiring already formed inside the layers. By that second evening, the printer lays its final pass at the top of the walls, and the crew shuts it down. A complete, solid concrete home structure now stands where there was bare slab 2 days earlier. Neighbors who left for a weekend trip come back to find a house that did not exist when they departed. One Icon employee joked that the hardest part of the job is convincing passersby that no, they are not hallucinating. And yes, the robot did that. Beyond the spectacle, it helps to understand why printing a house is so much faster and cheaper than building one. When the Vulcan prints walls, it replaces framing, sheathing, siding, and a good portion of insulation work in a single automated step. Tasks that normally take multiple crews several weeks happen in about 2 days with a team of just a few people supervising the printer. The lavacrete mixture is engineered to flow smoothly through the nozzle, then harden quickly enough to support the layer above it. The finished walls are solid concrete, which means they resist fire, flooding, high winds, mold, and termites far better than a wood-framed wall ever could. In tornado and hurricane country, that is not a small detail. There is also almost no waste. A traditional construction site sends mountains of cut lumber, drywall scraps, and packaging to the landfill. A printer squeezes out exactly the amount of material the design requires. Now, to be clear about the numbers behind the headline, the famous 48-hour figure refers to the printing of the wall structure itself. After the printer finishes, human crews still install the roof, windows, doors, wiring, and plumbing, which takes additional weeks. But the printed shell removes the slowest, most labor-hungry phase of construction, and that is exactly the bottleneck that has kept affordable housing stuck for decades. The first Americans to actually live in 3D printed homes were not wealthy customers. They were residents of a place called Community First Village, a 51-acre neighborhood on the outskirts of Austin, created by a nonprofit called Mobile Loaves and Fishes. Its founder, a former real estate developer named Alan Graham, spent years driving a food truck to feed people living on the streets. Over thousands of conversations, he came to a conclusion that shaped everything that followed. He often says that housing alone will never solve homelessness, but community will. So he built an entire village for the chronically homeless with tiny homes, gardens, a market, a medical clinic, an outdoor movie theater, and neighbors who know each other by name. In 2020, Icon brought the Vulcan printer to Community First Village and printed a series of homes, each around 400 square feet, with curved concrete walls, front porches, and warm, welcoming interiors designed by professional architects. These were not shelters or barracks. They were real homes, with dignity built into every layer, and they made history as the first 3D printed homes in America, occupied by people who had once lived on the streets. Walk through Community First Village today, and the atmosphere surprises almost every visitor. Residents tend chicken coops and vegetable gardens. There is a blacksmith shop and an art studio where residents earn income selling their work. Retired teachers and nurses volunteer alongside people who spent 20 years outdoors. Graham insists on one principle above all. Nobody at the village is a project or a case number. They are neighbors. The 3D printed homes fit that philosophy perfectly because they do not look like charity. With their curved walls, deep porches, and colorful doors, they look like something out of an architecture magazine. And residents say that matters more than outsiders realize. When your home is beautiful, you feel worth something. One of those residents was a man named Tim Shea. Tim was 70 years old when he got his keys, and his road to that front door had been long and painful. He had battled addiction for much of his life and spent years without a stable place to live, at times sleeping wherever he could find a safe corner. At an age when many Americans are enjoying retirement, Tim became the first person in the United States to move into a 3D printed home. He has described the feeling of walking into his little house with its smooth, curved walls and morning light coming through the windows as almost overwhelming. For the first time in years, he could lock his own door. He could make his own coffee in his own kitchen. He planted things. He greeted neighbors from his porch. Tim has said that the home did not just shelter him, it changed how he saw himself. Friends noticed it too. He stood a little straighter. He started making plans again, something people who live in survival mode rarely allow themselves to do. He even became an unofficial ambassador for the village, showing visitors around his home, pointing out the layered walls with the pride of a man showing off a house he built with his own hands. In a way, he had. His years of surviving had led him to that door. That is the quiet power hiding inside this technology. The printer lays down concrete, but what it really builds is a second chance. Now, before we continue, a quick pause because this next part is for anyone watching who knows what it feels like when the math stops working at the end of the month. If money is tight right now, if one rent increase or one medical bill could put you or someone you love in real trouble, or if you simply want to know how to help someone who is already out there, I put together a free guide called The Veteran's Blueprint. It walks through the assistance programs, emergency housing resources, and financial steps available to Americans right now before things ever reach a breaking point, including several programs most families never hear about because nobody explains where to look. It was too much detail to cover properly in a video, so I put it all in writing instead. The link is in the description below. It takes about a minute to grab, and if it helps even one person in this community stay in their home, it was worth making. Now, back to the story, because what happened next took this technology from a Texas experiment to a national movement. In December of 2021, in Williamsburg, Virginia, a single mother named April Stringfield stood in front of a brand new house with her 13-year-old son and received the keys to the first 3D printed home ever built by Habitat for Humanity in the United States. April had worked for years at a hotel near a local theme park, saving what she could, dreaming of a home where her son could have his own room. Habitat for Humanity partnered with a printing company called Alquist 3D. and together they printed the concrete walls of her 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom house in about 28 hours of print time. The printed construction saved an estimated 15% per square foot compared to traditional building, and those savings went directly into making the home affordable for her family. April put in hundreds of hours of her own labor alongside volunteers, which is how Habitat works, and she pays an affordable mortgage rather than receiving a handout. The house even came with its own small 3D printer, so the family can print replacement parts like cabinet knobs and light switch covers at home. When April walked through her front door for the first time, cameras caught her wiping away tears. She said it was a dream she had carried for years, finally standing in front of her, made of concrete laid down one careful layer at a time. And the movement kept spreading far beyond Texas and Virginia. In Riverhead, New York, a company called SQ4D listed the first 3D printed home ever put on the open market in the United States, a 1,400 square foot house on Long Island priced at $299,000, roughly half the cost of comparable new construction in the area. It drew thousands of inquiries within days. In other states, universities and startups began printing homes in cold climates to prove the technology works outside the Sun Belt. Icon also partnered with a nonprofit called New Story to print homes in Tabasco, Mexico, for families who had been living in makeshift shacks on about $3 a day, creating the world's first 3D printed community for families in extreme poverty. Back in Texas, Icon teamed up with Lennar, one of the largest home builders in America, to construct an entire neighborhood of 103 3D-printed houses at Wolf Ranch in Georgetown, just north of Austin. That project became the largest 3D-printed community on Earth with full-sized family homes, some around 1,600 square feet, printed by a fleet of Vulcan robots working across the site. These are not experiments anymore. Families live there. Children ride bicycles past walls that a robot squeezed out of a nozzle. Meanwhile, veterans organizations and homeless service providers across the country have been studying the Austin model because the economics are hard to ignore. When you can produce durable wall structures in 2 days with a handful of workers, the cost curve of compassion changes. Suddenly, a city looking at thousands of people on its streets can imagine printing its way toward a solution instead of fundraising for decades. Now, honesty matters in a story like this, so let's talk about the criticisms, because there are real ones. Skeptics point out that printed walls are only part of a home's cost. Land, permits, roofing, plumbing, and electrical work still cost real money. So a printed house is cheaper, but it is not dirt cheap. Building codes in many states still have no clear category for printed construction, which slows adoption. Some traditional builders argue that trained framing crews can raise walls quickly too, and that the technology savings are overstated. Others worry about what automation means for construction jobs, and a few housing advocates caution that no printer can conjure up affordable land in expensive cities, which remains the biggest cost of all. There have also been growing pains, printers that jammed in humid weather, early projects that ran over budget, and a learning curve for inspectors trained on lumber and drywall. These are fair points, but one argument keeps winning. America is short millions of housing units, and the construction industry is short hundreds of thousands of workers. The printers are not taking jobs from crews standing around idle. They are filling a gap that human labor, at current numbers, simply cannot fill. And every year, the machines get faster, the material gets cheaper, and another city updates its codes. The technology that printed one tiny house in 2018 is now printing entire subdivisions. The trajectory only points one direction. There is one more twist to this story, and it reaches beyond Earth entirely. NASA saw what Icon was doing in Austin and awarded the company contracts to develop construction systems for the Moon and Mars, because you cannot ship lumber to another planet. At the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Icon printed a 1,700 square foot habitat called Mars Dune Alpha, where crews live for a full year at a time, simulating a Mars mission. The same nozzle technology that gave a 70-year-old, formerly homeless man his first front porch is being prepared to build humanity's first homes on another world. It is rare that a single invention stretches from a highway underpass in Texas all the way to the surface of Mars, but this one does. So where does that leave us? A machine that prints houses will not fix everything. It will not heal addiction or erase trauma, or replace the human warmth of a community like the one Alan Graham built, but it attacks the two barriers that have stopped every previous solution: cost and time, and it does so in a way that is already putting keys into real hands. Tim Shea-Waters plants on his porch. April Stringfield's son sleeps in his own room. 100 families in Georgetown live inside walls laid down by robots. 10 years ago, all of this sounded like science fiction. Today, it is a Tuesday in Texas. If this story gave you a little hope for what this country can still build, do one thing for me. Hit subscribe, because every week I share stories like this one about the people and ideas quietly solving problems everyone else gave up on. There are more of them out there than the news ever shows you, and I'll bring you the next one soon.